and had each one lay in that coffin. And then it was followed up by, if they had power, if the children had power, what would they like to do with it? They were to make a video of what they'd like to do, and the shooters, 1 year prior to the actual shooting, went through the school, classroom by classroom, pretending to shoot down people. I mean, how much do we need here?
Yeah. Sheesh. And do you have you heard about this connection with also, that many of these kids seem to be going on antidepressants, SSRI medicine?
Yeah, they find that they're all on Prozac, or one of the many branch-offs of Prozac, because Prozac started to get a bad name for this.
Yeah.
And so they've altered the molecules a little bit here and there. It's still Prozac, but they call it different names to confuse the public. But it can cause acute aggression and tremendous aggressive outbursts coming out of the blue with no apparent trigger.
Yeah, and emotion. I've heard of everything from emotional detachments to a sense of that you don't have any kind of connection with your own emotional life, meaning that you're totally disconnected from what you're doing, basically.
That's a fact, and also these things interfere with your serotonin uptake in the brain. That the theory being that they can quieten down your emotions. However, it doesn't work quite that way, because anything which is reduced in the system of the brain is always compensated eventually down the road. Other things will kick in and try and compensate, and that's where the aggression suddenly comes in. Other chemicals are formed to try and compensate for this reduction. So tremendously aggressive.
Indeed. So what we're potentially might be looking at here is, as you say, a combination of actually many different things, and one can't, of course, take away the big aspect of that. Many of these kids, actually are, they are very, depressed, and they live, lives in a way, I guess, that might not be, fulfilling in that sense. Many of the kids might be lost, they don't know what they're going, and a lot of aggression, and life, seems meaningless, as it were, and this in itself might be, might be a something that, authority can manipulate in a way, I guess.
Oh, it's easily. I mean, the very fact they're in the state that they're in, with dysfunctional families which do not communicate.
Yeah.
That's part of the culture creation. They knew long ago that we'd have all these problems at this present time when the children have no anchors, they've nothing to fall back on, they've no real family to communicate to. And we found that in the Columbine families, because they seemed almost detached themselves from their own children. They gave them lots of money and just let them do what they wanted to do, and didn't inquire what they were up to, didn't seem even interested in what they were up to.
So the kids have
dysfunctional.
Yeah, and the kids have become the domestic terrorists, as it were, now. Then
yes. Plus, you've had for 25 years the children brought up playing video games of killing, death, and destruction. These games were developed for the military-industrial, or by the military-industrial complex, to train soldiers to be desensitized in killing their enemy.
Yeah.
And then they gave them to children because they wanted to rear a generation of aggressive and very compulsive killers for a certain period for the military, for the present New World Order, as Mr. Bush Sr. called it. They had to go from a passive population and breed an aggressive type that would join the military, because they're looking at a long-term war in the Middle East, and they knew that 25, 30 years ago.
Yeah. And there's, I think that there is a connection, an alleged connection between, or rather that the Virginia Tech, in this case, the university, or was it high school? Anyway, actually have a connection to DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, and they actually developed a video type game together with Virginia Tech. I think this was back in 2001 or something. that talked about, you know, the enhancement of memory, if I remember correctly, and a lot of stuff, and that actually went in. The video game itself actually went in and altered your, I think it was memory function or something like that would, you know, heighten your study ability or whatever. But even there is a very interesting, you know, connection in regards to this latest, you know, Virginia Tech shooting, obviously, you know.
Sure. Huh. I'm sure of it. There's been definite guidance from some source.
Yeah.
And also there's been ordered professionals, people professionally trained, who've been told not to stop this guy from doing what he was going to do. I'm sure there were plenty of signs before it happened. Plenty of signs. The police would know. They scour the internet. They've got thousands of people scouring the internet and taking notes of anybody they claim could be violent down in the future. So this is no surprise to those who've been watching. The only surprise is to the public that it was allowed to occur.
Yeah, I'm just going to correct myself. I'm looking at it right now. It actually was NASA's Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia, that tested this together with something called Eastern Virginia Medical School. So it wasn't Virginia Tech in this case, but again, you know, just implying that there is a connection, as you say, actually between, you know, video games and interaction with, you know, your mental health and a lot of these studies. So it's not any less interesting for that matter. But what if, you know, if we're to kind of expand this scenario a bit, or look at the consequences of you know, of these types of actions that took place in at Virginia Tech? Obviously, we have the question of gun control, metal detectors going in at the school, guards everywhere, you know, heightened fear and so forth. What do you think will be the kind of the ongoing consequences, as it were, to this kind of event?
Well, I do know that in U.S. publications, they've been pushing the big industries for security, which are just part of the military-industrial complex, have been pushing to go further with total monitoring of every individual. To get into these places generally in the United States, they're training children to go to school and go through metal detectors, thumbprints, identification cards, all of this stuff. They have armed security men there, police there, at all times. They're training these young children for the society they will grow up in as adults.
Yeah.
We will all go through the same thing, be monitored, thumbprinted, ID'd for everything that we do. This is the world that's being prepared right now, and they always go to the young to get them conditioned to accept it. They think it's normal now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
getting frisked going into school is normal.
It's amazing, you know. Yeah, exactly. Metal detectors and guns. What about the issue of gun control? I mean, this has been on the wallpaper, so to speak, you know, for many years now, I guess. But this is even a way. This event will further that, I guess.
Yeah, each time that they get more bills and more restrictions. This is to be a worldwide agenda. It's happening all over the world, actually, because they want a disarmed populace for what's to come down the road. And that makes sense when you read the Department of Defense for Britain. That's your War Department in Britain, and I call it the Department of Defense. And they published in The Guardian last week, the Guardian newspaper, their projections of the think tanks that they own of all the trouble they see with society for the next 20 or 30 years.
Yeah.
And they've got some high-tech weaponry they want to use. They know they're going to have to use it. What we should say now, what's going to happen in our cultures, our system, our economies, to make all of this rioting happen?
Yeah.
See, so they know something we don't know, and they're ready for it. They're openly publishing their plans.
Absolutely.
Right down to even using certain types of atomic warfare on segments of society. This is from the War Department of Britain.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I remember the release of this article now, and you know, as you say, official projections, you know, a few years ahead or what have you. And I think it was, let's see here, you know, there were a number of things. Even I think it was DARPA again that went into. You know, they have been focusing these last years more and more towards what they call, you know, as urban warfare, basically, you know, in the cities and so forth, and making the population is the, you know, basically the last enemy of it were, because the global empire in a way is already in place. So now it's a matter of fact, you know, of eradicating or getting rid of a certain, you know, population, types of population, I guess.
Yeah. In the Guardian paper, that's what it said. They would use certain types of atomic weapons on certain ethnic groups within society. Quite openly about it. And we should be asking ourselves, what do they have planned?
Yeah.
We do know what they have planned because the big boys have published it for years in their books.
Sure.
On the coming society, the upheavals that will be caused as we transform into the new global society, and how they're going to pack us all into the cities as habitat areas, and of all the crime there'll be because there'll be no work, and everything will be completely regulated, and we'll be at their mercy for food, shelter, clothing, and everything. That's what they've told us this in their books. Yeah.
Do you think that the issue of gun control is, I mean, would it be possible, you know, for you know, for people to, you know, let's say that, you know, they do have access to guns or whatever, do you think that is the way to go, you know, people, you know, lining up and you know, fighting a military force? Is it even possible? What's your idea about that?
Well, as far as raising some sort of counter to this, you've got to realize they've been building up the internal armies, the multi-jurisdictional task forces, they call them. These are specially trained police who they can also use in the military and give them actual combat experience and bring back into the police forces. They've been creating an army inside the Americas for 25 years with this technique. And police are always expanding now. They're always looking for new reasons to bring in and recruit more policemen. You have massive internal armies. And the police have two uniforms. They have their combat uniform, and they have the one you'll see them wearing in the streets. So they're being trained for something that's coming down the road. And obviously, from a planner's point of view, like a general at a coming battle, if you can disarm your enemy before anything starts, it makes your job much easier. It does.
Oh yeah, indeed, absolutely. How are things in Canada? Is it more controlled, you know, with in regards to the guns there?
Yeah, Canada was very peaceful that way for many, many years. And we have problems mainly in Toronto, in the north of Toronto, where and it wasn't the people's fault. This was a creation of government. They brought in lots of immigrants from countries that have the highest murder per capita rate in the world, and that's Jamaica and Trinidad, all in one section of society. Create basically a welfare system for them, and now you have the gangs, and so these gangs every so often go on a rampage over territory for drugs, shoot somebody until it becomes bad, and then when they shoot a white person, then it's mayhem, and then the government's only too happy to pass laws on all Canadians across the country. And this has been the obvious method of choice for the Canadian government. Let it happen, and then using the Soviet system of communal punishment, you pass a law on every citizen and take the rights away.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. But as you say, I guess that the best way to do it is to just, you know, avoid that type of, you know, conflict at all, if possible, if you can take away, you know.
In fact, you couldn't win it anyway, even if there was such a thing.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah.
You couldn't win it because they have such high-tech weaponry. Ready to use. They call it non-lethal, although it can be cranked up to become lethal. They can take out entire cities. It could put everybody to sleep. It could knock everyone out.
Sure. Yeah. Exactly. And
so I laugh, in fact, when I think about even the military using what really is an obsolete weapon, the firearm.
Yeah.
And it's to make the public think that's the best they have.
Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.